A text says, "You're on my mind." A bouquet from 1-800-Flowers says, "You're my everything." Heartfelt moments belong in the real world, not just your phone. For 50 years, 1-800-Flowers has helped millions of people make memories that'll last a lifetime with gifts they'll cherish forever. Their expertly curated arrangements and gift baskets ship nationwide with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't wait for the next big moment. Make it when you visit 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. That's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
This podcast is part of the History Shorts Network. Got a history show? We're growing, and we want great voices. Find us at HistoryShortsPodcast.com.
This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcast. Well, guess who's back? Back again.
That's what it is.
And we are back at History Teachers Talking after a 2-year hiatus.
Break. We always think, next week. And it just
Next week.
just became
two years later.
2 years later. For no real rhyme or reason, just life and
Life. Yeah. And I guess like we should tell some of our listeners out, if you're new to this, you guys will fairly quickly figure out what we're about and where this is going. But if you are a returning listener from years ago, this podcast was on air for 4 years. Tom and I started this. Yeah, dude, 2020 we started when COVID hit. And we were like, let's start a podcast. And then we did this for 4 years. And then essentially, I feel like when COVID fizzled out, this fizzled out. You know what I mean? Like, and I think we left at our height. I mean, we were literally being mentioned on NPR as like a podcast to listen to.
Getting some good press.
Yeah, we're getting press accolades. We were like voted #1, all this good stuff. And I guess it's kind of good because we left when we were kind of on top in a sense. So the premise is, for those of you that are just coming back, is that we are now 2 former history teachers. But when we started this, we were history teachers, and Tom and I have been best friends since college. So we're aging ourselves 25 years. But with that in mind, so we did it for 4 years, and this is not scripted. This is just 2 history teachers, now former history teachers, talking about history and other random topics. So the premise here is that we're going to do these once a month. They'll be roughly probably 30, 45 minutes long, something like that. But because I think we always get interested in what's happening in the news and whatnot, we might give you like these offshoot random episodes here and there. But with that in mind, you could expect 1 episode every single month. And then if there's anything crazy happening that we're like, dude, let's talk about this, then you'll get some bonus ones. So
yeah, we can just jump in. We'll do that too. When we try to keep things topical, what's going to be. I think one of the first we started doing that was when Russia invaded Ukraine. Remember that?
That was like a big deal. We got a bunch of other history teachers on.
That's when people started like, we'll talk about Ukraine. Yeah, we do like political assassinations. So we have like a big, like huge
catalog. So which is all now available.
You have anything from like Bigfoot and zombies, like I said, to presidential assassinations, comic book superheroes, like you name it, we were covering it, and we'll continue to do that. Just for fun.
Yeah. This is this is for fun in a sense, and maybe we'll have some history teachers here and there actually visit us. And just so you guys know, as I'm saying this idea of like we're former history teachers, but we're still in education. I mean, Tom is an administrator, and I now am a college professor, but ultimately we still are around the education world. It's just we should change this to former history teachers talking.
Too many letters.
Too many letters. So our return topic for today, we kind of bounced around some ideas, but since I guess this is our comeback episode, first time in 2 years, we're a little rusty, so like bear with us. If you want to like find us at our prime, find one of those episodes at like episode 100 or something like that. We will probably be decent by then. I mean,
Yes, I'm
I hope.
super jealous on the comeback episode. We're still
Yeah, no,
like find our footing a little
that's,
bit, but
that's right.
we'll be okay.
We'll be okay. So we'll decided to make this comeback episode about the greatest comebacks in history, right? So there is no rhyme and reason. There usually isn't rhyme and reason when it comes to this. We kind of just throw out a topic and we talk about it. And I prepare for this separately, and Tom prepares for this separately. So we kind of really don't know where it goes because we're kind of just bring our own stuff
Yes,
into it.
sometimes we have the same ones, sometimes we have some different ones, and when we say comebacks, these can be like different types of comebacks. We're looking at cultural comebacks, obviously military comebacks, um, political comebacks. All right. So there's a bunch of different forms of comebacks. I've just said comebacks like 12 times, but for a bunch of different ones that could really, that we're going to be talking about. So we don't have a definition on one type of comeback. They're not just going to be like military comebacks or even
Yeah,
sport
yeah, yeah.
comebacks. There'll be a bunch of different ones.
And we should also mention that the way that I approach this, right? So things have changed in 4 years, right? I mean, 6 years. When we started this in 2020, I'm actually using the Great Events of the 20th Century Reader's Digest book that gave me a lot of these hints. But obviously, AI exists. So and I threw this into all different AI engines to see what AI had to say, and some were better than others, and a lot of them kind of overlapped. And then I went and did a little bit more research on the ones that overlapped because I thought maybe those would be like the ones that seem to pop up. AI wasn't really a thing when when we started this 6 years ago. However, the way I approach this is I'm pretending that there's a book that is called the turning points or the biggest comebacks, let's say, biggest comebacks in history. And whatever we covered today is just some of the ones that are going into this book, this hypothetical book. So I don't want anyone getting upset that, like, oh, you didn't mention this. Like, pretend that this is a 400-page book, and we're going to talk about some of them, some of these
Yeah,
comebacks
there's going to be ones that
from
are
this
going to
book.
be, there's going to be ones that are left out. And these are like some of the greatest comebacks in history. They're not necessarily about winning. They're just really about like refusing to lose when everything says that you should. You just,
Yep.
these individuals or these armies, whatever you want to call it, just kept on going and they battled back from oblivion,
Obscurity.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Like us. Like us. Look at that. We
Yes.
walked
Yes.
away, and now there's
And
this is our comeback.
we're
This is
battling back.
this,
We're battling back.
this is this is our comeback story. All
Yeah.
right. So I
Jordan
mean,
23 and Jordan 45. Let's go.
yeah, let's do this. That's right. So we could take this anywhere. I mean, the one comeback that I kind of feel like it is a comeback, no matter how you spin it. I mean, it has to be Napoleon, right? And again, there is no rhyme or reason. There's This is not chronological, but I feel like Napoleon probably has one of these like greatest, but
Yeah.
also ultimately failed short-lived comebacks, right? So obviously disastrous that campaign in Russia. Napoleon thought he was going to do great, and he doesn't at all. Primarily because of the fact that Russia refused to really fight him, and they allowed Napoleon to. And the campaign started in 1812. They allowed him to get in deeper and deeper into Russia while no one really faced him, and he was kind of getting a little flustered because he's like, "Why is no one actually facing me to fight me?" And he goes, "Well, maybe when I get to Moscow, they'll definitely stand up for their capital." And wrong, that didn't happen. He makes to Moscow, and no one stills. No one really. It's burned. It's destroyed. Like no one's there to fight him. And then the actual real enemy sets in, which is the winter. And Napoleon has to battle his way back, infamously, back to France, where he barely makes it back. His army's tattered, destroyed, and he is forced to give up his throne in a sense. And then he's banished, famously or infamously, to Elba,
I'm
and right, and now you have the Congress of Vienna, you have all the major powers are like, "Yeah, this guy's done." So they're literally throw this huge party at the Congress of Vienna, and they're gonna plan a post-Napoleonic, Europe. Everyone's kinda just like, "That chapter's done, we're moving on to the conclusion of this." And literally while they are partying, because there's a lot of parties going on in Vienna, and they're structuring the post-Napoleon world, while all this is happening in February of 1815, he escapes Elba, right? He escapes Elba, lands in France,
yeah.
and essentially what happens here, Tom?
Well, he like we said before, he loses everything. He gets exiled to an island. He escapes. In 100 days, he takes back his empire. Like so, his low point, like what you're saying, was his exile on Elba, which is this small island off of Italy. He did have some limited power there because he still had like a strong base back in France. It's kind of interesting you brought up this topic because my son was just asking me about this. He just comes home randomly with like history topics, and now he's
Napoleon.
been asking me about Napoleon. I'm like, I'm not talking about Napoleon right now. Like, this is not in the mood. But I guess he has a lot of
Eat
questions
your
on it.
dinner. Eat your vegetables.
Exactly. It's just like, no, we're not doing this right now. But yeah, he said Europe pretty much believes he's finished. Meanwhile, in France, like the monarchy, King Louis the 18th, he returns. The French citizens are soldiers are unhappy though. There's a lot of that economic stability, which is really what you're going to see a lot of this, and even now, like people are content when their wallets are full, because that means that their stomachs are full. But once that goes away, then all bets are off. So it's a lot of like there wasn't really a lot of national pride at the point, and there was a lot of fears of reform because the French Revolution is going on. That's where French history is kind of complicated because Napoleon's still always there for the next couple of years. You also have the French Revolution, which is a total just chaos, right? And all this is kind of going on at the same time. So he kind of makes this perfect stew for his comeback to begin when he escapes in February of 1815. He escapes Elba. We're only about 1,000 soldiers, and he lands in southern France. And this is the moment where everything could have ended instantly. Like if they would have just went after him
Yeah,
in this
if they were
2015
like,
transfer.
bye, get back on your ship.
Yeah, like he
Yeah,
already had 1,000 soldiers. He couldn't really do anything, but he kept on like winning just without fighting because of who he was, right? So Napoleon marches north toward Paris. Royal troops are sent to arrest him. Instead of fighting, Napoleon supposedly just steps forward and says, if any of you will shoot your emperor, here I am." And they just kind of they join him instead of arresting him, and
did you
his
see
army
Napoleon?
starts to
N-
grow. I
Did
didn't
you
know
see
the one
Napoleon?
with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, yeah. There's a scene where he does that. He steps
Yeah.
forward. I mean, the movie itself is it's so
Oh,
off.
yeah. Yeah, well, I
Uh,
mean, who knows? I mean, how much a lot of
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff
Hollywood
gets
does
people
his
get
own thing.
revisionist, even modern day stuff gets revisioned
Yeah,
like that. But, yeah,
but
but
that
he
scene
doesn't
is in
really
there. That scene's
conquer
pretty
France.
cool.
He just walks back into power. His army grows as he marches because the soldiers are joining it. This is kind of this return to glory moment, and he kind of reconquers France, but he doesn't really totally reconquer France, but he kind of like walks back into power, and he's like, "Here you go. As he's coming in, Louis 18 runs out when he enters Paris in March of 1815, and Napoleon resumes the control of France in about 3 weeks. It's known as a period of 100
Yeah,
days.
yeah. And obviously, we know how this ends, right? So the party goers at Congress of Vienna are like, "Damn, like that sucked." So automatically, there's new coalition forces formed, and we have
Britain,
the
Prussia,
infamous.
Austria, and Russia all come together
Yeah,
just to like try to take him out. And the
yeah.
climax is Waterloo.
Yeah, Waterloo, and that is truly the end of Napoleon. But this is still considered, even though it ultimately failed, it's still considered one of the greatest
Well, it was a
comebacks.
comeback. Like no one expected him to come back, and it took those countries, Britain, Prussia, Austria, and France, to forward him to kind of, and other countries, to form this coalition to be like, we're not doing this again. And they just
Yeah,
went in with like overwhelming force. And Napoleon kind of knows he has to strike quickly before they fully mobilize. He's not going to be able to fight all those countries at once. And then he has that battle of at the Battle of Waterloo in Wellington with Duke Wellington, and just he loses, and that winds up being his end for good, right? Then they put him farther away from Elba. Where do they put him? Say Helena, right?
yeah, 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 in the middle
Yeah,
of the South Pacific. I mean,
yeah, I
South
think they forget.
Atlantic.
And
Yeah,
finally, he dies of 1821. And there's kind of debate: did he die from a stomach ulcer, right, or stomach cancer, or was he assassinated?
I
Was he
think
poisoned?
I think they think now it's stomach cancer. I think that's been kind of more or less settled, right? I don't know.
I know a
Maybe
couple people that I talked to that do a lot of European history, and they still think he was somehow they're
it
more
was
inclined
fishy. It
that
was
he was
fishy.
poisoned. But
It
yeah,
was
that it was
fishy.
that because they just didn't want him to somehow come back. Because there's some books out there I know, or stories out there that have come up last couple of years that he was planning a third comeback. So
Hmm,
who knows?
who knows?
But it just shows like this was a bold power grab from exile to emperor in weeks. Really no major battles until Waterloo when he got beat. He just marched into France. And they're like, here you go.
He's
Like
back.
you're in power again.
Guess who's back?
Tends to be a theme in France where you just walk in and take things over, but we're not going to go there, right? There's a lot of power, a lot of reputation. He had a lot of loyalty at the time. So the soldiers remembered him as a hero. He was an image of being this powerful army. So they just kind of went along with it, you know?
Yep.
It
And then,
failed. It was a comeback that failed at the finish line, basically.
yes, but still a comeback. So, like Winston Churchill, right? Returned to power. A lot of people don't realize that Winston Churchill was kind of like a washed up politician by 1930s. I mean, when I think of World War II, you're like, oh, Winston Churchill, right? But he screwed himself up at the failed Gallipoli campaign in World War One, right? Which he planned, and it was supposed to be this grand, big turning point at Gallipoli, and he winds up Obviously, Britain falters at Gallipoli. It doesn't work out. And Winston Churchill's extremely embarrassed. He's in the Navy and a Secretary of Navy, I think, and he's extremely embarrassed by this plan that he pushed for, to the extent that he quits and enlists, just like as as a regular in World War One. But politically, he's done. Right? He spent,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you could call it like political wilderness
He was
after
pushed to the
World War
sidelines.
One.
Yeah, he was
Hundred
pushed to the
percent.
sidelines, but then he winds up becoming, like, the voice that carries the nation
Yeah.
through the darkest hour. Like,
Yeah,
that was
that's right,
very good.
right? So,
Prussian
sidelined
like
by
that.
conservative sidelined by conservative party, that's right, you got good accent there, Tom. And
Trying, they'll
then
come back.
World War II, happens, 1939, and he returns as the First Lord of Admiralty, essentially, that's his first post. And then Neville Chamberlain's he's screwing up majorly, we're talking about 1930s during the, infamous appeasement, right,
With
Nazi
you
Germany and
with
whatnot.
Neville Chamberlain.
But he eventually resigns. So he resigns in May of 1940, Chamberlain, and then Churchill becomes prime minister. People don't realize, I mean, this guy's been around for a while. Like, we're talking World War One, and then just political exile. So when he becomes the prime minister, he's like 65 years old.
He's older,
In
yeah.
Yeah, in 1940, he's an older dude. But this is where it kind of gets you get this whole lion thing, this big persona, because essentially he rallies Britain
Yeah,
with
like, he
mostly iconic speeches, right?
mostly he doesn't win any battles immediately anyway, he just wins belief. Like, the people
Yes.
believe in him, and because I will see those signs, like, "Stay calm and carry on," like, that's
Yeah.
Churchill. So,
Yeah.
their finest hour, we shall fight them on the beaches, and he really just raises British morale.
Yeah, absolutely. And they say that it was this leadership that ultimately saves Britain from invasion and helps secure Allied victory, right? Like, it's a symbol, really, he's a symbol of resilience, because this is a guy that essentially was done as a politician and then steps in at a last moment, really at a moment that's probably Britain needs a leader. And he steps up to the plate and becomes that leader, right? To the extent that he actually earned, and it was also funny because at the end of World War II, he's also voted out, right? So
Oh, they
it's
get rid
like,
of him right away, they don't want him there, yeah,
yeah,
like,
we're like,
they
okay,
kinda they
bye.
used him, and they kinda knew that, he kinda knew that too, they were using him, he was a wartime leader,
Yeah,
yeah, so he goes from political outsider to really the most important leader in the Western world for a while, especially until
yeah,
Roosevelt and the United States get involved.
100%. And then he becomes prime minister again in 51, right?
Yes,
That's another
another
comeback.
comeback, yeah.
We might, but he was done by then. Like, it was rough.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
when
know.
he gives his, like, Iron Curtain speech, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I also feel like he's also kind of like he's old.
He's
I mean,
old.
not that there's anything wrong with being old. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
No,
he's
but he
not
was
in his
really old.
prime.
He was really old
He's
at that
not in
point.
his prime.
No,
Let's
he
put it
was
this
not,
way.
yeah.
Do you have another one? What's another one we could put on this
Well,
list
I
of
would say
great like?
since we were just talking about the British in World War II, let's talk about Dunkirk, right? Let's get away from the political
Yeah.
ones, get to a military one. And this is a comeback that wasn't supposed to work. So you probably maybe you've seen the movie. That movie's actually pretty good. I remember it came out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dunkirk, right? Doesn't
Yeah,
have like
good
Willis
movie.
in it, and isn't Harry Styles or something in that?
He is. He's
Yeah,
one of them, yeah.
he's one of the people. So you have hundreds of thousands of soldiers. They're trapped. They're surrounded. Right, the oceans are at their backs. There's no way out until the entire British nation pretty much shows up to get them out. Right. So this is happening when the Nazis start the Blitzkrieg in May of 1940. They're launching this kind of fast invasion, right, all across Western Europe. France collapsed in weeks. The German forces are cut off. They cut off the British and Allied troops in France, and they could basically capture the entire French army. And did we ever do a podcast just on Dunkirk? I don't remember.
We might have.
We
It's
might
been a
have,
while.
but basically they could have been, Hitler should have or could have wiped them out. Instead, he wants to leave it to the Air Force to kind of just bomb them out, still trying to negotiate some type of surrender, where basically there's a bottleneck of these soldiers in Dunkirk, France, and the British army is basically trapped in France with the English Channel at their backs. And 300,000 plus Allied troops. Their supplies are low. There's no defensive position. The German forces are closing in fast. They're dropping like leaflets telling, listen, surrender or you're going to be face total annihilation. And this doesn't mean the British would lose 300,000 troops. They're going to lose basically their main army. And because of this evacuation that takes place, because of Churchill, he gets basically every boat available, right? Fishing boats, private yachts, merchant ships. Civilians risk their lives across the channel and go back and forth. The RAF, the Royal Air Force, is providing air cover as best they can. They're keeping the evacuation routes open, and a lot of these soldiers actually wind up getting away. and about 338,000 soldiers are evacuated. The majority of the British army is safe. They did leave a lot of equipment behind. All right, so that was so now they don't have like the tanks and all the heavy artillery that they had. They had to leave all that behind, but the soldiers are ready to fight another day. And why this matters, not only is it a huge morale boost for Britain that they have all these soldiers back, they're able to keep fighting World War II. If they lose at Dunkirk or their army gets destroyed at Dunkirk, they're kind of done. Like they still have the Navy, so I don't want. I guess they can still like provide as far as that goes, but they're not going to be involved. These soldiers wind up invading years later in Normandy, the D-Day invasion.
Yeah.
And really,
Yeah.
if Britain falls, there is no D-Day because Britain was used as the base basically to attack from on D-Day. But these soldiers, those very same soldiers that evacuate Dunkirk in 1940, are the same ones that invade 4 years later on D-Day. So
Nuts. One of those big
it's
what ifs.
yeah, it's a big what if. So it was more of a retreat, not a victory, but it is a comeback because those soldiers do go back. They're like, oh hey, this is where we were. Here we go.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Another one I think of, and I hate to go back to political, but this one
that's what you
we've
like.
all seen the. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But this one, I mean, when I thought of comebacks, right? When we thought about doing this episode, I thought of Napoleon and I thought of Harry Truman, right? I mean, look, how different are we, right? I mean, we're talking hundreds of years difference,
Very
but
different.
Harry Truman, 48 election against Dewey. I mean, that was, I think it's still considered one of the greatest upsets ever in American political history
Yeah,
elections.
more of an
And
it's
some
a big
people
time
might
upset.
argue,
Yeah, we can call it a
yeah,
comeback though too.
yeah, but definitely a comeback. I mean, Harry S. Truman, when he became president after FDR's death, no one gave this guy a shot of ever winning his own presidency outright. I mean, they're like, who is this guy? Right. And ultimately, even his own party, I mean, war ends and his own party turns against him. They're against his civil rights policies, they're against integrating with the armed forces. You have the Dixiecrats, the more Southern Democrats are against their own. Truman is a Democratic president. They're kind of against him. You have Democratic Party that is super divided. You have soaring inflation, post-war inflation, labor strikes, which were kept at bay during the war, and now they're not anymore.
Now the deals that Roosevelt basically made are like coming back now, and he gets kind of stuck
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
right. Cold War tensions. China's falling into the communist sphere, so he's viewed as like a failure. This guy is not. I mean, he's written off. He's actually literally written off because all the pollsters, pundits, they all gave him zero chance. They're like, there's no way he's winning against Republican Thomas Dewey, right, in 48. To the extent that, and this is the infamous or famous image of this, newspapers actually went ahead and printed Dewey defeats Truman headlines like prematurely. They were ready for at the end of the election for the next morning. They already printed their first front pages of newspapers that Dewey defeated him. And he pulls off one of the greatest comebacks or upsets, you might say. I think he won by 303 electoral votes to like 189. And the way he did this is he's like, screw this, right? And as everyone wrote him off, his comeback was he got on a train,
Yeah, just talk to
literally
the
got on,
people. Yeah.
yeah, got on the
People
train.
became personable. No, this is before television.
Oh yeah, of
There was
course.
no Twitter either, so
Nope.
they weren't tweeting things.
No, he went 22,000 miles by train, right? Hundreds of unscripted speeches. Like you said, he just talked to people. He called the Republican Congress a do nothing Congress. And this whistle stop campaign, 22,000 miles across the United States. And he like had no break. People are like, dude, you're gonna die. Like you need a break. He's like, no, I need to talk to the American
Yeah,
people. Like
he
they
was
need
all
to
gas, no
see
brakes.
exactly. And they say that this comeback, right? This was the comeback. Like after he did this whistle stop tour, election night, he pulls off this greatest upset, right? And this is important essentially when you think of comebacks because once he is reelected or elected, I guess, because he was finishing up FDR's term, but this is when he enacts the Marshall Plan. This is when NATO's formed, right? Like this is when he actually desegregates the armed forces. Like imagine all those things that Truman does in that his own outright term that might not have happened or perhaps might have happened differently or been delayed if he doesn't come back. Like I mean, he could have been like, you're right, my own party left me, right? Like it could be done, but he decides to power through. So again, a political comeback but a comeback nonetheless.
Ellie's Eden, part of Azure Standard, was created to make gardening more meaningful for families. In the Azure family, gardening is more than a hobby. It's how kids learn where food comes from, how families slow down together, and how we care for the land. Ellie's Eden offers carefully selected plant starts, seeds, and garden essentials chosen to help you grow with confidence. Whether you're expanding backyard beds or planting your first patio garden, Ellie's Eden helps you grow something lasting. Explore Ellie's Eden at azurestandard.com.
A brief word from our sponsors. You got another one?
Well, yeah, of course, I got a ton. And that's one good, like, political upset. They also compare that a lot to, they gotta remember, like, narrative isn't always reality. And we're not gonna get into it today, but that's also the 2016 election, right? Because that was also like,
Well, in 2024, right? I mean,
yeah, well, I would say more so, yeah, without a doubt. But 2016, I mean, everyone said Hillary was gonna win, and then I
that's
just
true.
remember watching it that night, be like, "Oh, it doesn't look that way." If you wanna watch something funny with that, watch the, Saturday Night Live clip with Dave Chappelle on the 2016 election. It's, pretty funny. Anyway, sorry, moving away.
No, I mean, well, look, we could pause for a second, right? So 2016, Donald Trump, no one gives him a shot. But I think if you had to say comeback, you have to admit 2024 as a comeback because
Well,
he
yeah,
is
and I think we were mentioning this a little bit before, like, well, all the narrative was he was gonna be in
he
jail,
was supposed to go
and
to
then
jail.
he
Yeah,
winds up
like
becoming president for a second term.
literally.
So only the second man ever to have, what, 2 terms
Yeah,
non-consecutively, right? Other one's Grover
100%.
Cleveland.
Yep.
So that used to always be a, trivia question in my class.
Yeah, not
Like, who was
anymore,
the
right?
any president to have 2 non-consecutive terms? And that was considered the greatest political comeback of all time. I remember watching History Channel, they
Yeah.
actually used those words, was Grover Cleveland, and that's probably a president that most people don't even remember,
Well, that popped up for me a lot,
you know?
actually. Grover
Yeah.
Cleveland, that came up as one of the big comebacks, and I see that the parallels of the 2024 because Grover Cleveland also has had a lot of skeletons in his closet.
Yes.
Babies out of wedlock, committing his like lovers into asylums because they were trying to expose him. Like Grover Cleveland had his own skeletons, and they're like, and again, same thing. He lost, and everyone's like, he's done, but he stuck around in politics and came back 4 years later, ran again and won. And this is very similar to 24 because, I mean, Trump leaves office, impeached twice. You have the January 6th
Yep.
Capitol riot, right? The predictions are that his political career is over. Then you have these multiple criminal indictments, felony convictions. I mean, like
Yeah,
this
well,
guy, I mean, like this was a comeback, whether
yeah.
you like him or
Okay,
not.
yeah, we're not getting political, not saying we
Yeah, yeah,
agree or
whether you like him or
disagree,
not.
but
It's just,
it was a political comeback
yeah,
without a
he was
doubt,
written off. Yeah,
without a
100%.
doubt, big
Yeah.
time.
So I guess we doubled that one because this one, I guess we talked about Trump, but we also talked about Grover Cleveland.
Cleveland, yeah, we have a whole bunch of political ones. The one that I was gonna do next is a little bit different, different avenues. It's not military, it's not, political, it's more cultural, and it's basically the ultimate failure comeback story. Happens in 1970, and that's when a round trip to the moon turns into a fight for survival 200,000
Oh,
miles from
Apollo,
Earth,
yeah, yeah,
right?
Apollo
So Apollo
13.
13. It's kind of
Yeah,
relevant right now at what's going on with, because just recently, right? They had that spacecraft that actually went farther than
yeah,
Apollo 13, and they came back. Those still, everyone is good. So why does this making history? Well, Apollo 11 was super popular. That made history in 1969. But the really public interest was kind of dropping by the time Apollo 13 came around, and it was kind of seen as a routine crew. You had, these different astronauts, right? Fred Hayes, Jim, Lovell, and Jack Swigert, and who's actually a last minute replacement. And like, these are not the household names, right? This isn't Buzz Aldrin or Neil Armstrong or anything like that. And their goal was they were actually supposed to land on the moon. They were going to land on the moon at the, Far Muro region of the moon. That's like at the not quite the dark side of the moon, but right over there. But about 56 hours into the mission is when that famous slogan comes out, right? Houston, we have a problem. It's when one of their oxygen tanks in the service module explodes, and the spacecraft actually loses oxygen for breathing, electrical power, and the water that's linked to the fuel cells. And this is pretty much this is not just a malfunction. This is like a death sentence. Remember, they're in basically like a shipping container in space, which
yeah.
is really crazy the more you think about it. Like, you look at
Well,
these things like,
think about it. They lost power, water, and life support. I mean,
yeah,
literally, like they were like gonna die. I mean, they're literally, it's like
yeah.
waiting for death,
And why they're
right?
floating in space farther than any human being has ever been from Earth before. So,
Yeah,
they were unable to land on the moon. That part was, aborted pretty much immediately. Like, well, we're not landing on the moon anymore because they land on the moon, they're not getting off. I don't even think they probably
yeah,
could have. They could have crash
yeah,
landed on the moon, and then maybe Apollo 14 could have. I'm not trying to be funny here, but bring them back in body bags or whatever, because they were not making it
yeah.
there. Also, the
I'm not.
turnaround
I'm
was
not. You're like. I'm not trying to be funny. Body bags.
well,
That's
that's what I
that's
don't
not
know
gonna
they
be
would
funny.
do. I don't know what they put them
No,
in.
I know.
I
I know.
just coffin's not gonna bring a casket to space. Come
Yeah,
on,
no,
it's
it wouldn't be no.
expensive to
But
get
I
stuff
mean,
up there, Pete.
yeah, no.
Um,
But the ground engineers, insane, right? Like
yeah, so they kind of became
yeah,
like a master
improvise.
class in like problem solving, right? Like all these different things they had to like figure out. Like the lunar module, originally meant for landing, became a survival capsule. They were able to go in there because that actually did provide limited power. Which had some life support systems and oxygen. The only problem was it was designed for 2 people for 2 days, but now it has to support 3 people for 4 days. So you're like,
Yep.
it's even more cramped in there than like those normal, you know,
The what carbon
capsules.
monoxide? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but
carbon monoxide levels are going to raise dangerously high.
yeah,
We could kill the crew. So you basically were trying to fit. They've said it's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. That's what's basically going on here. So engineers on the ground are doing all these things to try to basically
rig. Like
rig
yeah,
it,
yeah.
yeah, so they can get them home.
A
Design
solution.
some
Yeah,
sort
they
of
it was a
solution.
carbon dioxide scrubber that they rigged,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this is
It saves
literally
the
a
crew.
comeback.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because
That's
they
what
come
saves that.
back to Earth.
Yeah, they were
Um,
looking back to Earth. Yeah, they power conversations, like they shut down all unnecessary
yeah.
systems.
No,
They
but they
dropped the
used duct
temperature
tape
to
and
like yeah,
socks.
yeah, duct tape, man. Duct tape is like my
Duct
dad
tape and
always says, he can
socks.
fix
That's what
anything.
did
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And then the maybe it got freezing, they had to drop the temperature to like basically near freezing. Water was rationed to extreme levels. So like the Fred Hayes I was talking about before, he becomes extremely ill due to dehydration and the cold. They had to navigate without computers, which is crazy when you think about it. Like I don't
Yeah.
like,
Annual precise re-entry trajectory. They like
yeah.
used math.
Yeah. So when you say, when am I ever going to use this? When kids are in geometry and math class, when am I ever
Yeah,
going to use
yeah.
this? Well, if you're stuck in a space capsule, all right, 22,000 miles away from Earth, that's when you might need to use this. You want to get back. Yeah. They basically aligned the spacecraft using the Earth and the sun. Like this is like that, like old school, like, like
Yeah, the
pirate stuff. Yeah.
Galilei kind
Galileo.
of thing.
And they had to perform engine burns by hand. And basically one wrong move and they're going to drift into space forever. And they're going to be like Voyager that like just drifting off into space. But they did a reentry gamble. They looped around the moon, getting kind of that like slingshot effect. And I remember seeing that's in the Tom Hanks movie, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Because when they're on the other side of the moon, then there's no radio communications. There was like amount of time and there was no radio communication with them whatsoever. So they didn't even know if they were still alive necessarily. And they had to restart and come in module after days of shutdown. They survived their heat reentry that even though it was badly damaged. And there was also radio blackout during reentry, last a lot longer than expected. But then they signaled that they landed. They actually don't know they land until they land. I'm gonna say that I mean like obviously the mission control. The parachutes were deployed. It was a splashdown, and then all 3 astronauts actually survived. So there was no moon landing. That was failed. But the comeback here is that
They came back.
they came
They
back. So
literally came back.
they
Yeah.
actually came back. So it was called a successful failure. And it was just really just showed that like no pre-written, that human ingenuity under pressure could kind of like solve this. I mean, there was no pre-written solution. That everything was improved just in real time. The teamwork between space and Earth at the time coming together, astronauts, mission control, and they saved everyone's life. Because if they get lost out there, that's going to kill the space program right there.
Yeah. Again, we could go on and on and on. I'm just trying to like wrap my head around some of these, but Ulysses S. Grant as a
Oh, I
person.
saw that one popped up a couple of times. Yeah, this is as grand as a person. The Civil War popped up a couple of times too.
Yeah, a lot of decent amount of things for Civil War. But like when you talk about a comeback, Ulysses S. Grant is he served in the Mexican American War. He's a decorated soldier. He graduated from West Point, granted towards the bottom of his class, but he was a military guy.
Oh yeah.
But then he winds up resigning from the army right after the Mexican American War in 1854, because of drinking. I mean, he had a drinking problem, heavy drinking problem. And tries to farm, fails as a farmer, tries to be a real estate agent, fails at
Well, he
that. Then
failed at everything. Yeah, he failed
yeah,
at everything.
store clerk for his father in Illinois. Like he literally failed at everything he tried, right?
Yeah.
And then at one point they said he was selling firewood on corners, street corners, just to feed his family. So when 1860 comes about, this is an old former West Point graduate. When the war begins in 1860, he's broke. Like he's working in his father like leather goods store and washed up failure. I mean, he's nothing. Literally, imagine in 1860, war starts. He's a clerk at a store that's like a washed up alcoholic. When the war ends, he is the commanding general of all the Union
Yeah,
forces
yeah.
and the hero of the Civil War, right? Like Comeback doesn't quite cut it. So he rejoins the army as a colonel in 61, and he's got extreme. He's known for aggressive tactics, which essentially lead to early Union victories, which are initially not given to him. The credit's not given to him because of the fact that he's just like washed up military colonel. They're like, no one's going to give him credit. So every time he did well, that credit went to his superiors, and then he started clashing with some of these superiors. And his big moment, shining moment, comes at Fort Donelson and then Shiloh. Then, but then he's promoted. He's slowly getting promoted and recognized. And then Vicksburg comes in 1863, and then it's like this guy like knows how to fight. Like he knows how to lead
Well, yeah,
men.
he knew how to use his advantage too. Because remember, a lot of the
Yes.
soldiers were calling him a butcher. And that was his own men because he just was like, well, the South has 10,000 men. I have 30,000. So why are we not just attacking straight on? I mean, wipe them out.
Yeah.
And so he caused a lot of that. And that's a whole other story. But he also worked well with Lincoln. That's another thing that really worked well
Yeah.
for him. He got along with Lincoln, where a lot of the other generals, like McClellan and stuff, didn't get along with him.
Yeah. I mean, and like we said, right? He winds up obviously becomes he's a relentless guy. He gets promoted, becomes the major general. The only American to receive 3 stars twice in US history. Served 2 terms as president eventually. He writes some of the greatest military memoirs of all time. I mean,
Yeah.
a comeback again doesn't quite like this guy came from nothing
Well, he refused to
to
quit. He refused
yeah,
to
top
quit.
of the
So
world.
you give him
Yeah.
that. Like that was probably his greatest strength, wasn't it? He was like a smart guy, or he just refused to quit and just kept on going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did
I
really
mean,
well.
you could say the same thing about George Washington, a comeback crossing the Delaware. We've all seen the painting. That was a comeback. I mean, we were down like that book, 1776, right? By,
We were
was it,
more than down. We were done. Like, the American Revolution was popping up
yep,
a lot too,
a lot.
and
Yes.
like, whenever I was researching for this,
Well, look what
because it's
happened in New
again,
York. The Continental
yeah,
Army is literally
yeah,
routed in New York by the British in
they were
December
kicked out, and
1776.
people don't realize that. Yeah, the British controlled New York for like the whole war.
Yeah, until they were like, "Okay, we're leaving."
Or they're
We're
like, all
like,
right, fine, no, it's over, fine, okay, we'll leave.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
that's not
mean,
like we took it back. But New York
well,
City in 1776, Washington, this was supposed to be this big battle, 1776, and Washington and his forces face the British, and they get whooped. Like to the extent that Washington doesn't even know what's going on. People are running away. They're just like, forget this. They're going home. You have desertion. He routed. His morale is collapsing of the entire Continental Army. The first real test, first real battle, again, December 1776. We're just starting. Just everything
yeah.
collapsed in front of him. And enlistments are expiring. Thousands of troops are deserting. So Washington essentially runs away through New Jersey,
And that's
right?
why, we live in New Jersey, so that's why we're talking
Yeah.
about this a little bit. But like everywhere you go, especially part of my job right now is we're doing stuff on the 250th anniversary of the United States, which I guess we should do a podcast on something like that, right?
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
But
That could be an excellent.
yeah, that's coming up this summer. But there is just all of these things: Morris County 250, Bergen County 250, all these like smaller counties. And everywhere you go, like, well, Washington was here, Washington was here. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because he was running away the whole
He
time.
was literally
Like,
running
like
away.
that's why he was there. Like, why? So I was that too. We were driving by. We were going to this one place in Morristown, New Jersey. My son said, "Why are these signs about Washington?" I'm like, "He really stayed here?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, he stayed everywhere because he was just running away." Like,
Yeah.
so that's why there's all these like
And this
historical
is the crazy
markers
thing back
everywhere.
then. Like, gentlemen did not fight wars in winter, which is so crazy. Like, he runs away,
Yeah.
right? And then obviously he runs through New Jersey, but he's got like 2,400 hungry men left. Like, they're barely wearing clothes. And everyone's like, well, that sucked. Like, it's done. And the British kind of settled in New York and they're like, well, we're going to wait out the winter. Washington doesn't really have an army anymore. The rebels are done for. Let's just celebrate. So they leave New Jersey as this buffer zone between New York, obviously, New Jersey would become the buffer zone.
Well, it's New Jersey.
And
They're just like, yeah, let him have it.
yeah, let them have just and then but they leave it to the Hessians, and they're
Yeah.
like, "The Hessians will take care of it." And this is when Washington, obviously everyone knows this, on Christmas night, Washington leads this daring surprise crossing of this supposedly ice-choked Delaware River. Again, it wasn't really that bad. I mean, we've been there. You could probably throw a rock across it. It's really not
Mhm.
that bad. But anyway, so a
But it was
dawn
a
of
psychological comeback, right? This was again,
yeah,
it
it
wasn't really a
really was.
battle.
I mean,
It was like a
yeah,
psychological comeback, and then what's going on is they suffered a brutal winter through Valley Forge. Like, same thing, food shortages, disease exposure. And then they start training more. Particularly,
yeah,
what's that guy's name? Baron von Steuben. Remember him?
yep,
And the army becomes more disciplined and professional, so they emerge from these winters as a real army,
yep.
basically. and that's
Yeah.
that's just going to start this comeback. And then, of course, the 1778 alliance with France brings in the navy, their navy, the money, and the troops, and that's going to lead to the final victories at Yorktown and their surrender.
Yeah. Do you all right, like I mean, geez, there's so many we could go to. A lot of American Revolution, obviously. The American Revolution itself is a comeback. I mean, obviously, we could say that,
Yeah,
but
so
that's too
on there,
broad.
this comeback underdog story, which a lot of these are pretty much too.
Yeah. Well, if you think of a little broader, you can think of the Japan itself, Japan, like in the Meiji Restoration,
Yeah,
1868. I mean, in the context of mid 19th century, Japan was super isolated, right? And the
Manchu period.
shogunate, yeah, shogunate can literally isolated, and it faced humiliating Western demands when Commodore Perry sails into what becomes Tokyo in 1853. So Japan is risking colonization, right? Just like
Mhm.
what's happening to China.
Well,
They're
they didn't want that.
literally,
They saw what was happening to China, and
yeah. So
they wanted to make sure that didn't happen to them, basically.
exactly. So that could be like the comeback of Japan, you might say. Like young samurai basically overthrew the shogun in 1868. They restore some power to Emperor Meiji, right? And then they go in this crazy spree of modernizing, right? Adopting Western technology, industry, education,
They're
military
super fast, yeah.
models.
Less than a generation, they go from this, like, feudal society to one of the most
Yeah.
modern, powerful nations really in the world.
Yeah, well, an industrial power, right?
Yeah,
Then they defeat Japan proper in 1865, then Russia in 1905, which no one saw coming because, like you said,
yeah,
we're talking within 40 years, they went from like a backwards island nation to defeating Russia, which has been written about in Western
yeah.
history for hundreds of years.
Like, the first time an
Um,
Asian power beat a European power,
yeah, and they're embarrassed,
1905.
like, they're embarrassed by Commodore Perry, they're embarrassed by Americans that show up, the black ships, they're talking about steamships, and they're like, "Whoa, we kinda are behind," right? And America's like, "We're gonna basically dictate how this is gonna work. You're gonna open up more ports, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that," and it's like, this could go either way, but Japan comes back from that embarrassment, right? Like, this is they were like, "No, no, no, we're gonna do things our way," and eventually, we know how that ends, right? I mean, Pearl Harbor, but
Well, yes, well, that leads us in the next one, right? So Japan, they're basically going for world dominance, right? And the Asia Great Crow Prosperity
yeah.
Sphere, and that leads directly to conflict with the United States. And obviously, the attack on Pearl Harbor, basically in 2 hours, the U.S. Navy is shattered. But then in 4 years, the United States helps win a global war. So that's also like a comeback, right? When you look at
Yeah.
like how the U.S. Navy at the time, all the battleships anyway, were pretty much decimated in Pearl Harbor. We all know that we've done one on Pearl Harbor before,
Yeah.
but that this kind of just woke up the nation. So it was more of an attack and a wake up call, right? Roosevelt date that will live in infamy. The U.S. fully commits to World War II. The economy shifts to wartime production. Millions enlist or are drafted, and then factories are producing ships, planes, and tanks instead of refrigerators and stuff like that. Women enter the workforce. Unemployment, Great Depression ends overnight, right? Right there. And the US doesn't just fight, it's out producing everybody. Then by the time the Battle of Midway comes,
Well,
that's
Midway could be viewed as a comeback. I mean, right? Think about it. Pearl Harbor happens.
well,
U.S.
maybe
starts
it's a
getting
comeback in the
rocked.
Pacific. Yeah, that's like a tipping
Yeah,
point of the comeback in the
yeah,
Pacific. That's whenever the change of tides, because at that point, the US is always on defense. And after that point, the US is always on offense, and Japan is always on defense after Midway because their carriers are gone.
yeah. I mean,
Craziness.
yeah. I mean, if you think about it like broader terms, so since we're in World War II, West Germany, post-war Germany, I mean, that was considered an economic miracle. Um, Germany was in ruins in 1945, completely cities bombed flat, millions dead, displaced. We're talking there is no infrastructure, there's nothing. And then you have the division of the occupation. But then what ends up happening is West Germany implements these market reforms. I want to say it was like 47, 48. I don't have it in
Yeah.
front of me, but you have these market reforms, currency stabilization. They basically embrace the Marshall Plan hardcore. They're like, yeah, yeah, we'll take the money. Like, we'll build this up, and they pursued integration into NATO right after. Right, so like everyone wrote Germany off. We forget that after World War II, West Germany becomes a success story. Like they within a decade. Right, so we're talking by mid 50s. West Germany is Europe's economic engine. They have the strongest economy in Europe. And people forget that, like, oh, we defeated Hitler, and oh yeah, what happens to Germany? Like, no, Germany like jumps back up, and this is So this is the comeback, but the comeback obviously is also orchestrated by United States because for us this was like a model of how capitalism is better than communism, right? You want to highlight because East Germany was not doing well. So we
No,
invested
no.
money and capital for West Germany to be successful to kind of aid in this like Cold War dynamics, right? This idea of like, look, West is better. But yeah, still, I mean, definitely a comeback
Well,
from
that just
complete and utter destruction.
it's a comeback of Germany as a whole too,
Yeah.
right? The reunification of Germany. Like students don't even fully understand that there were two Germanys after World War II up until what
Yeah.
the 90s.
90. Yeah.
And I
That's a
remember
comeback itself.
I
Yeah.
mean
The
we were kid absolutely
reunification.
with the Berlin Wall coming down and East and West Germany becoming one again, which was a big deal. Like people don't really talk about that as much. It was because it was a big deal not only because it's a comeback of Germany, but it would happen without a war. Everyone just thought if that's going to happen, it was going to be like the epicenter of like World War III, where there was no war, there was no invasion, protesting like a mistake, right? Wasn't it like a mistake or something where like they were going to allow more travel between the two? That's just something they were talking about. It was
Yeah,
happening
yeah,
in
there
the
was. Yeah,
future.
yeah, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to remember. It was like there's like a memo that's, oh yeah, we're going to allow more travel between East and West. And so
And they
everyone
took
thought it
that
was
for like,
yeah,
oh,
for
okay,
like
let's go.
immediate,
Let's
like
open it
right
up.
now. So they just
Yeah.
went there, and the border guards were like, "Oh, why are all these people here?" And they're like, "Do we close it down or just open it up?" And they just opened it up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then before a couple of weeks later, the wall's down. Right? David Hasselhoff's danced up on top of it, and it's over
That's right. MTV. You have one more? We could do one more. We could for the good of the order.
for
I
the
don't,
good of the order. What should we go out
I don't
on?
know. I keep on like I saw like Steve Jobs kept on popping up for me because he found like he saved Apple, but I'm
So,
like
yeah,
I
so,
don't.
well, yeah, I saw Apple's comeback. I mean, people like that, but Apple was always making money.
So I
I
don't know
guess
if
it
that's
was.
really a comeback.
So yeah, basically, what was it? The iPhone, the iPod. Those were the ones that really brought them back.
Well,
There's a lot.
because he was ousted, right? In
Yes.
'85. He was
Yeah.
literally ousted. And then it Apple struggles through the '90s. And then finally they bring him back as an interim, I think, in '97. And then he winds up pulling what Elon did with X, like slashes jobs, just takes this whole company and shrinks it in a sense to, I guess, challenge Microsoft. That's really what it was about.
That's what it was.
And
Yeah.
then he starts launching this colorful iMac. I mean, we all had him in middle school, 98. You have these like teal color all in one Mac computers. And then really 2001 iPod, um, iTunes, and eventually iPhone 2007. But they say one of the greatest comebacks because he was thrown out of that company. But it's not just Steve Jobs is the comeback because he still went into he's had another company in between, but Apple is the comeback because they hired the not so nice guy back that essentially made Apple's market value
Brought
soar
them back.
from
Yeah.
near zero, really, to the world's most valuable company today. So, kind of,
Yeah,
I
they
guess
were a
it's a
big one.
comeback.
The only last one I had that was interesting was Netflix comeback. They were like a failing DVD company, and then they
Yeah, they
came
were
out
like
with
begging.
the streaming giant. Imagine
What
if
do you call it?
you invested in Netflix back then. That would kind of
Yeah,
be
but
like
they
a
were
different
begging. What do you call it to invest in him? They were like Blockbuster, please partner
yeah.
up, and Blockbuster's like,
That's why I
no.
said no. So yeah, they were basically
Eh,
almost wiped out by late fees and video store empires, and they reinvented entertainment basically, and now it's changed how people watch TV. They were because people may not realize this, but in the late '90s they were a DVD mail-in service. I remember that. You see like the
yeah.
little
Oh, I
advertisements.
remember that. And your queue,
You
and
would get
when
it. Yeah, I
once
think
somebody
some
returned it, it would
and
like
you would get
send
it
it over
back.
to.
And then they have that like some then they had it like some like Walmarts or like stores, right? Like you could like go in and like
I
rent them.
think so.
Or it was something similar, Redbox or something similar like that. But customers order DVDs online, they live to their house. There were no late fees. Blockbuster was like a dominant on the industry. They didn't really consider Netflix anything. They really struggled in the early 2000s because they just weren't growing fast enough. They burned through a lot of cash. They actually offered to be sold to Blockbuster for $50 million, and Blockbuster
Yeah,
says no. And
imagine.
then they
We
totally
would be
changed
doing
everything. Yeah.
Blockbuster and
Yeah.
chill instead of
Yeah,
Netflix and
then they
chill.
just moved to a subscription-based model, and that changed everything. Now Netflix is like, man, if my kids didn't have Netflix, I don't know what they'd be doing, you know?
Maybe reading.
The older one
Uh,
reads a little bit,
yeah, yeah.
but yes,
I'll stop. My
yeah,
older one used to read too. All right. Anyway, guys, so yeah, this was our yeah, we're just trying to dust off our microphones here. So bear with us. But this is basically what you could expect from us once a month. I don't know. I like the number 13. I think maybe we'll release these on the 13th of each month. It's easy to remember. the 13th of each month, there'll be a new episode. And then
There you go.
obviously there might be some other ones here and there, but every 13th, the best way you guys could find us, obviously, is just subscribe to wherever you're listening to this. And then we'll put all the links and other things in the description. But for everyone out there, welcome back. And for all of our new listeners, welcome.
Yeah, welcome aboard. You know, we
Yeah,
welcome
welcome
any
aboard.
we welcome any feedback. We welcome any topic ideas. But yeah, feel free to recommend any topics that you might want us to discuss.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Stay safe, everybody.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.